Hey there, if you happen to be in the Chicagoland area and you were listening to this podcast before May 5th, I would like to invite you to a very special concert. It's a Chicago Soul and Wine Pairing concert at the City Winery in Chicago. This is a great room for music, great room for food, great room for wine. And it's a cool show. I'm actually going to be performing a lot of songs from famous Chicago soul artists, some very popular, Curtis Mayfield, Chicagoland artists as well, by the way, like the Jackson 5, and a few other artists that you would be very surprised to see that have ties to the city of Chicago. And you can go and attend just for the concert, or for a little bit more money, you can pay for the actual wine pairing too. This is really cool. I did this once. You show up and you listen to my performance, but after about every 3 songs or so, they come to your table and bring you a wine flight, and you get to sample these great, interesting wines. A wine maker comes out and actually gives you a quick description of what you're having, and then I come out and do a couple more songs, and he comes out and gives you more wine. There's music, there's wine, and music. By the end of it, you're digging on the tunes, and you're kind of giddy because you're a little, wind up. It's a great way to spend an evening, and it's on a Monday night, May 5th. Who has plans on Monday? So join me May 5th, if you can, at the City Winery in Chicago. Go to my website, robbycelestin.com or chatterfact.com. I'm sure you can just see it all right there. I look forward to seeing you guys out. If you're listening to this after May 5th, I apologize. I'll bet you it was great. In the meantime, let's listen to another podcast. Here we go. You are listening to A Chatter of Fact, and across the table from me, and again, as I always say, these are not interviews, they are conversations. Today, across the table, I have an actor, director, and writer, like brand spanking new writer. You're a writer now.
I am.
Happened. Well, you were a writer before.
I was, yeah.
But now you're like script writer because you wrote something, it ended up on stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Danny Bernardo is here, folks. I saw your play Mahal. And again, I was asking you, like, what theater, because, the space was, like, the 773.
Yeah, it's, the venue was Stage 773, but the presenting company was Bailiwick Chicago, which is my home theater company.
Okay, and so that's forever what that theater's known as, is the Bailiwick?
Bailiwick Chicago, yes.
Okay, all right, I'll have to remember that, because...
Oh, and that happens a lot in Chicago theater. We have so many storefront theaters that float around to renting venues, so it could be... the House Theater at the Viaduct, or no, they're not the Viaduct anymore. That's the Chopin. It's always.
So is Bailiwick kind of the company though? Like,
yes.
Will your work under like the Bailiwick whatever flag ever run through another theater, or everything lives at the Bailiwick?
Oh no, I mean, as a resident playwright, that just means we develop some of my work, and if it makes sense for a main stage season, it'll move forward to be a main stage production, which is what happened with Mahal. It was really a cool story how Mahal came about. It was I wrote a play. My father had just passed the June before I started writing it, and I wanted to write a play about him. I was going through a really weird relationship right after my father died, so I needed to sort of work my way through that as well, and I came up with this play, Mahal. And
how autobiographical is Mahal?
Every writer writes about themselves, and it's just a matter of how well you code it and how well, who the actual author voice is. Like, everyone, there's a gay Filipino American as the protagonist in Mahal, and so people who's a big geek, and so everyone's like, oh yeah, that's Danny's story. And whereas there are a lot of elements of me in the main character, there are a lot of elements in me in a lot of the other characters, and definitely in the me in the relationship between Mikey and the would-be boyfriend. I was definitely the would-be boyfriend.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I need to back up then, because for anybody listening, you wrote the play Mahal. It was last year, right?
It was last summer, yeah.
Yeah, last summer,
yeah.
and that was my introduction to you. In fact, when I saw the play, that was like when the podcast idea first came, and I don't know if you were aware of this, but I thought I looked you up a little bit, and I really enjoyed the play, and thought, this guy, and the things that I just heard about you personally, you were actually the guy that was always going to be the first guest. Like, okay, I'm gonna start with a writer. It's gonna be this guy because of the stuff I've heard about him, So that he's gonna come here, he's gonna smack the mic with his coffee cup. No, but then so I was really excited about you being like the guy, and then as soon as I kicked this thing off, you were busy. You were doing like a million things, it sounded like.
I'm still...
So backing it up,
yeah, sure.
Mahal, I mean, it was great, dude.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks.
Such a good play. I liked the story, and I loved all the talent in it.
Yeah. Oh my God, we couldn't have not found a better cast.
I know you have so much experience as a director and as an actor, but like I want to get into the writing thing.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So Mahal, like, I mean, let's even back up before Mahal.
For sure.
Okay, so, like, because before I, most people know me as a singer and stuff, but before I did any acting or singing or anything, I was like a writer first.
Sure.
I remember like seventh grade, a guy named Mr. Stankovich, a teacher. That's really his name, by the way. Shit.
Stankovich.
Mr. Stankovich.
Oh my God.
I know. I mean, tell me he wasn't bullied as a kid.
Oh my God, seriously. And as a kid and as an adult. As a seventh grade teacher.
Oh, poor guy. I think when he's dead, he'll be bullied.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he was the first guy to say, you have a flair for writing. There was that one moment. I'm like in the seventh grade or whatever, and then that was it. I was writing for the school paper, writing scripts, writing poetry. I think poetry is like an early thing for all of us, right?
Teenage angst is like the language of poetry. Are you kidding?
So did you have a Mr. Stankovich? Was somebody, when you were a kid, did somebody say, hey, you're a writer?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I remember even starting writing as early as second grade. Oh my God! Whoa! My first novella.
What? In the second grade? You're like,
it was a child's length novel that I wrote called The Fairy Tale Mix-Up. And
in the second grade?
In the second grade. It was crazy. I mashed up. It was like, how old was I? 7 years old. I wrote like 40 pages and pictures. It was crazy. And but it was like Hansel from Hansel and Gretel and Dorothy ended up in this weird land, and it was all the fairy tales were mixed up, and they had to like negotiate their way through this land and
that is
fix
awesome.
it. Yeah, I mean, so and then Once Upon a Time happens. I don't know, like millions of years later, but
wait a minute, were you pulling, like at the time, were you pulling from like The Wizard of Oz, or did you actually read some of those stories?
No,
as well?
I read a lot when I was a kid, so it was I was just pulling all, and then I read the Brothers Grimm stuff, so it was just like.
But in the second grade, did you?
Yeah. Oh my God, I was reading like Robinson Crusoe in the second grade. I was a weird kid.
Dude, that is awesome.
I was a weird kid.
But I mean, as far as like just the language and that type of conversational writing and just writing in general, the vocabulary alone, like when you're in second grade. I mean, are you kind of taking in everything? Were you understanding most everything? I mean, I've never read, the Grimm stories.
I can't speak how well I wrote it at 7 years old, but like, I mean,
but to even read that stuff, at 7,
Well, I know just the Brothers Grimm is very, I don't want to say it's sparse, but it's almost colorless.
Okay,
it's very like, okay, so here's what happened, like Briar Rose met a monster, and then 7 petticoats later she died, or like it's very, there's no emotion to it.
It's not like you were reading Edgar Allan Poe in the second grade. Fair enough. All right.
But Robinson Crusoe though, that was
that's a book.
Got
That's
me.
a real piece.
Yeah.
But to be a second grader reading that,
it was just I don't know, for some reason my second grade teacher, like at how I was testing and how I was writing, she's like, here, try that and see what happens.
Dude, so when they broke up, like whatever, and these are the A readers and the B readers.
Yeah,
and you had to always be in like team A.
Well, then that's when I got moved to the special school, and not like the short bus school, but I don't say
you were
big
like
bus.
a smart.
I was a smart.
You were
kid.
in the big bus school.
I was a big bus school, and then I
Nice.
became an actor at the age of 10, and then everything my academics kind of went into the back
This
burner.
is on the coast.
Yeah, this is when I was in LA. Yeah.
So that's where you grew up.
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
So you were doing like what kind of acting were you thrown into? Like early on, was it commercial?
It was mostly commercial work. I didn't get into my first play until I was like 11 or 12.
What types of things did you do first off, like commercial wise?
I was really lucky. I mean, in the 80s, it was not a very diverse landscape on TV. So I was really lucky that when I got my agent, she was really, and my acting coach actually, they were both really supportive of me because they could see that I was actually dedicated to being an actor. It wasn't like I didn't have a stage mom. Like I actually found my agent. I found my coach, and I was like, Mom,
wait, at 10?
So I wanted to be an actor.
Were you your own agent? Were you like
drawing
contracts?
I was my own manager. I wasn't my own agent.
Oh my God, dude.
I always wanted to be like, there was something about being an actor that I really wanted to be a part of. So I said to my parents, I want to be an actor. And they're like, oh, okay, that's good. Okay. You know, they're really supportive, but they're immigrants. They have a simple life. They go to work, they have their family. And, you know, they're probably not the only, but, you know, they were untouched by the industry in LA, you know, and that's rare. You know, they have no concept of what that is. And I think that's true for a lot of immigrant families in Los Angeles. They know it's there, but whatever. So I was just getting like really fed up. I was like, well, I want to do something. And so I was 10 years old and I was been writing these crazy stories and like just
reading novels.
Like, after I got through War and Peace, I was like, well, what do I do next? So I called information because what else is information?
Wait, and again, how old were you?
I was 10. I was 10 years old.
Son of a, that's crazy, dude.
So I called information. I was like, I want to be an actor. And information said, well, do you have an agent? Because it's Los Angeles and that's what they would ask you. And I'm like, I don't. Can you help me get an agent? So they put me through to this children's agency, and I said to the receptionist, I want to be an actor. And she said, well, have you had any training? I'm like, no, how do I get training? And so she gave me the phone number for who would end up being my coach. And I said to my mom, I'm like, and I called the coach, and I'm like, hey, I want to be an actor. I want to take classes. And she was like, well, can I speak to your mom? I'm like, well, she doesn't have anything to do with this. She'll just show up and write a check. So
she was taken out of the equation.
I'm like, seriously, I'm like, she'll just show up and write a check. Just tell me where to go. And so she's like, all right, well, let's meet. So I'm like, all right, Mom, we're meeting this woman at this time. Let's go. Bring your checkbook. And started taking classes. She called the agent that I was trying to sign with, and she's like, all right, this kid's the real deal. Let's see what he has there. And there was not a lot of Asian American kids on the market, so I definitely stood out a bit in my age. Okay. But there was also not a lot of need for me. So I was really lucky that my agent really pushed for me with casting directors and things I wasn't necessarily right for. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough to book a couple of commercials, 2 or 3, and
there are people out there, dude. There are people out there who, you know, are trying to break into the business and figure out what they have to do, and you know, these are adults, these are grown ups in the world trying to figure it out. And where do I go? What do I do? And you were 10, and it's just so funny because if there's a lesson learned, it's like, well, just do it. Yeah.
You know, just do it.
Because at 10, you figured out what many young adults who talk about it but maybe don't put things into action, you know. I mean, or even the ones that do, they're still like kind of lost. Like, what do we do? It's insane that at 10, you like just had it, you just figured it out.
Well, it's a different game now,
just kept asking the questions. Yeah. You just kept asking the right questions.
Well, and I think...
Who are you?
I don't know. It's crazy, right? I mean, I've always... I don't know. I mean, this industry is not for the faint of heart. And if you're in it to... Like, At 10, I never thought I want to be famous. I never. That was never in my cards. You know what I mean? Yeah. There was something about telling stories and like.
So the craft.
Yeah, it was always something about watching Fred Savage in the Wonder Years, and like saying, or the kids in Stand By Me. That was still one of my favorite movies. You know, it's like these are kids my age theoretically. I mean, at what point I'd seen it too versus how old they were. These are kids that are like around my age on film, telling these great stories that I can relate to. Those are my friends, and I want to tell those stories too. I can tell. Oh my
God, you're blowing my mind because even having the maturity to care more about craft than fame. You know, the last a couple of podcasts we've talked so much about people getting involved in the arts for the wrong reason and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to necessarily rehash that, but it's just a theme that you know you can't help but notice. So you know where you know it just becomes clear that if you almost separate the men from the boys in a way, you know, the adults from the kids when you see who's doing it more for the right reasons.
Yeah, you know? And there's something about our culture that's very fame oriented and now oriented.
Every year.
Yeah. And I mean it's only progressively
make a
gotten
sex
more...
tape. You can, you know,
Yeah.
if you're not talented at all, make a good sex tape. Be good at sex.
Yeah.
And you're going to be famous.
And somehow you're famous.
People forget that. I think the fans of like the Kardashians, like they forget. I think all of their fans, especially the younger ones, completely forget or they just don't realize, like, you know, they're only famous because they had a lot of sex. Like,
and like Paris Hilton was only famous because she has a lot of money and
same
is a
thing.
socialite,
And then
you know?
had sex.
And then had sex.
Right.
You know?
So it's like, oh, there's somebody with money having sex, now she's famous.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having sex or making sex tapes or having money, but that's
Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
No reason to be a celebrity unless you're a porn star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which, you know, and much respect for porn stars too.
Oh my
you know,
God.
do what
Let's
what
talk
you do.
about endurance and performance.
Yeah, man.
Did you order a pizza? So yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. You can't get any more naked metaphorically and literally
Right.
than
Yeah.
being a porn
There
star.
you go. So, but yeah, that's just impressive that you had like that mindset.
Oh, thanks. I don't know. It was just...
Back to the writing then.
Yeah.
though.
So I mean, it was something I always did. You know, I always kept up. And actually, around junior high, my Mr. Sankovic was Miss Andreessen, who it was an
Much
eighth grade.
better name.
Yeah, Miss Andreessen, who was great. She had this core group of kids that and I guess this was, you know, in the early 90s, so it was less weird. Like she would, like, you know, she didn't have any kids, so she would just take us out on cookouts and like, you know, she's amazing and very supportive, and she was one of the first ones to figure out that it was gay, because again, poetry is like the language of teen angst.
Wait a minute. Did you? When did you realize versus when you like came out?
I've known all my life that I was gay.
So then was there?
Or that I am gay.
But as far as making that I was,
that was gay. Not anymore. That's all. It's a new podcast.
Yes, but tomorrow. This is a straight cast.
Yes.
Tomorrow you make the gay cast. Well, like when were you like, all right, now everybody knows now? Because culture's weird.
Culture's weird.
What has it been? Would
the
you say
time.
the last? I don't know. Not even. I want to say 10 years, but no. The last 5 years that it's become way more.
Here's
acceptable to a lot of people.
Yeah,
I can't
well,
even
that's-
say everybody because it's a weird world.
That's the thing too. You have to keep in mind is that although, like, living in a city, we live in a bubble.
Yeah.
And living in watching mainstream TV and media, we live in a bubble. We forget about the people in very small towns in rural America or in the deep South or the Bible Belt. So for them, things really haven't changed.
That's so messed up, I know.
It is. I mean, it's like that's why there's a lot of talk about, so sidebar, there's a lot of talk about writing coming out stories and are they still relevant? And it's like, yes, they are still relevant. Identity plays, no matter how many times an identity has been established in a culture, identity plays are still important because there's always a new way to tell an identity play that will speak to someone even more specifically.
Absolutely.
I was really lucky. I came out when I was 14. And
Man,
in the
and
in the
that
mid
time,
90s,
so that it was still
Will and
right.
Grace hadn't happened yet, and so it was like, no, but
It
seriously,
become the popular norm.
Yeah, but
Right,
that was, you know, Will and Grace,
Yeah.
like it or love it, hate it, love it or hate it, but it was a very galvanizing, you know, it was
An important show.
Yeah, it was an important show,
and hilarious as all hell.
yeah,
but,
you know, and
yeah.
you know, some people love it, some people hate it, but it was important, and I came out when I was 14. I did what I started coming out to myself. Like fully, like, all right, well, this is a thing, and you have to deal with it. And
God,
it's
that's
fine.
a young age, dude.
Yeah, man. I also had an agent at 10 by myself. You know, what I mean, it was
so
like
you had balls.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't make your own way, and if you can't make your own self happy, then what can you do? You know, you have to live for you, and you have to be respectful of others. Sure, but it was one of those things where I was being a regular teenager, and what do teenage people do is they have crushes on celebrities and what have you.
Who was your celebrity crush?
Oh my God, I have no.
Was it
problems
weird?
with
Was
no,
it like
it was not weird at
Chewbacca?
all.
No.
It was not weird at all. It was
Okay.
Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World. So if you just happen to be listening, Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World, I was in love with you. Part of me will always be in love with you. Part of me knows that you were born 8 days after me. Exactly.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so you were stalker love?
No. I was teenage girl in love. I
Okay,
mean,
fair enough.
It was like, you know, the teeny bop. Well, and
Yes.
it segues into like,
Yeah.
I mean, we had the teeny bopper magazines where you take the pinups and you
Yeah.
put them on your wall.
And you had him?
Oh yeah, and the interviews about like, you know, what your favorite cookie is, and like you're like, he loves Chips Ahoy. You know, you're just like crazy, right? So I had him all over my wall, and we were grocery shopping, and I was reading another one, and my mom, and she hates when I tell the story, but I have to tell it. My mom, so I was a freshman. Hi, Mom. I was a freshman in high school, and she says, "Danny Baklakaba," which means, "Are you a faggot?" There's no Filipino word for gay.
Wow.
Bakla, it translates literally to faggot. And I mean, people in the Philippines
Now, she said this
in the grocery store.
after seeing there's a lot of boy posters hanging up, and it wasn't like, for me, I had whatever, I had Spider-Man or Indiana Jones, you know. If there was a girl, I almost couldn't put a girl poster up because I think my mom would just know that, oh God, he's just perving out right now. Yeah, he's
turning Japanese.
He's grabbing his little Celestin and just going to town because he has Heather Thomas or whoever. There's a chick from the show called The Fall Guy, I think, that I was obsessive over. Blonde lady.
It wasn't Heather Locklear though.
No, Heather Thomas. She was way hotter, actually. She's like Heather Locklear with more curves. I like curves.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Selma Hayek kind of.
Nice.
I like a body that looks like somebody poured it.
No, that's a really good way to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But so I couldn't do that. But so if there were dudes in my room, it was usually like Indiana, somebody somebody I wanted to not be with. So she just somehow noticed your posters were a little bit it's a guy, but there's like a heart. He drew a heart around his face.
And it was funny. I mean, the conversations that were happening around it from because my eldest sister kind of the jig was up for mom. She goes, my eldest sister was like, so are you gay? I'm like, yeah. And she said, okay, just so you know, people are talking and people are asking me. And she said, I just said that he's a good actor and he respects him. And I'm like, right or strong, you are a fine actor. You really are. You're dedicated to your craft. You played Gavroche at 8,
But Danny Bernardo had no interest in your talent at the time.
Absolutely
He wanted to hug you and squeeze you till your eyes popped out. He was your guy.
Yeah, man. I hung out in Burbank, hopefully.
You know what's funny is that, seriously, going back to relevance, though, it is so silly. Like, nobody can say that a story about somebody coming out nobody can say that there's an expiration date on that.
Absolutely not.
Because if you cannot say that, because if you do, you're breaking all the rules of storytelling. And anybody that questions me on that, well, then tell me now, when are they going to stop just writing about love?
Yeah, for sure.
Stories will be written about love and relationships forever and ever, never go away.
How many meet cutes can we see?
Seriously, it's always going to happen, and it tells itself. So I mean, in some ways, a lot of the coming out stories, it's still an untapped source of storytelling because there's so many different people that are doing it so many different ways. We have not seen all of them because we've already seen. I'm too shy to ask the girl out. We've already seen every love story, and it's being retold and retold. And sometimes you can give a little spin on it, here and there. But for the most part, we've seen it all. So
we've seen it all. Yeah.
We haven't. I don't think we've seen all the coming out stories. So it's actually more of an untapped resource. And I think it's the haters that are saying, "Oh, it does, how many more of these do we need?" It's like Will and Grace does not.
Well, and that was the thing that people were speaking about. Like some criticisms about Mahal was that Mikey, the main character, who's gay Filipino American, like everyone in his family, well, except for one guy, and it was just more tension than anything. But everyone's like, oh yeah, he's gay and he's just part of the family. And people are like, well, he comes from a strict Filipino family and they're traditional, blah, 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 wouldn't they? And I'm like, well, first of all, watch the family, because they're actually not. They're probably the most Americanized Asian American family represented on stage, or one of them to come out in the last 5 years. Someone, oh my God,
look at your Filipino Huxtables.
Yeah, someone said that we were the Filipino Huxtables.
Oh, really?
Yeah, someone said that. That's exactly. I was trying to think of who said it.
Oh wow!
But it's true. It's like it's just a family. It's an American family, and but they were not a lot, but a few people said, well, why is it so accepted for this? It's hard to believe that. I'm like, well, I'm living it. I've lived it. There's there may have been, if I would have told the story 5 years prior or whatever, there might have been some drama, there might have been some hurt feelings, but then people get over it. And I was really lucky that I had a tense year with my parents, and then my first boyfriend.
How old were you when the first
boyfriend, Mark, and I was 15. Yes, I was 15 because I was getting my driver's license the year after.
So in LA, was it? I mean, you're in LA. So
this was actually in Vegas. We moved to Vegas since.
Okay, so well, even more so. I guess. That it just seemed like, well, for one thing, I grew up in the Midwest all my life.
Sure,
and at that time, we're talking 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
You didn't see many 15-year-olds. People were waiting until, they were doing the Doogie Howser, let's wait quiet, So not only to come out that young, but then to already find somebody else that young, that's, was there a lot of the animosity and, did you run into that stuff?
Oh, sure. I mean, I was really lucky. I mean, I should preface this by saying, well, I don't know. I went to performing arts high school, so it was definitely
okay. So there,
it was. I mean, there wasn't a lot, but even then, there wasn't a lot of gay guys that were out at the time. I mean, when Facebook came out and you saw all your friends from high school, like, I knew it. Like, girl, you were fooling nobody. But like, but it was definitely more accepting. We didn't have the stereotypical jock culture in a high school. Theoretically, the theater kids were the popular kids.
Nice.
And so I kind of got to be a Heather. I kind of got to be or if you watch Buffy, I was a Cordelia. And to much of the chagrin of my friends now knowing that about me, but but even then I was one of a handful of people that were out, and it was literally within our circle, in the gay youth circle of Vegas at the time, you could say the gay guy of Clark High School, the gay guy of like Cimarron High School, and I was the gay guy of the Las Vegas Academy. It was like
instead of like the Warriors were our football logo, you were like the gay guy for
we had our fiefdoms. Like, it was like crazy. So like,
okay, well, how do you get? I don't want to like move away too much because right now we're all like rainbows. But very quickly to get back to your pen, and I don't mean that sexually. Hey, how do you get from like this little kid, obviously who's getting agents and probably working the stock market? Good Lord. How do you get from like this kid writing stories to this guy writing a play that hits the stage? Like, where does it connect there? When did it get into script writing?
Sure. Well, I mean, I started writing. I was a theater major in high school, at a performing arts high school. I was an acting major because there was really no direct. It was theater or tech theater, and I'm not a techie, so.
Okay.
In respect to the techies, I'm just not one. Like, I'm awful at it.
Because even the format, suddenly, because you're writing stories first off, and then you can just go. I mean, as long as you're grammatically correct. Yeah. But then even then, poetic license and all. But you're writing blocks of words. They mean something. But when you're writing script now, you're talking about a format too, and
voice.
And all that.
And voice is really important.
Absolutely.
And I actually, so it all actually ties in. So my first boyfriend, he was still in the closet to his family, but when we met and, the meet cute and the butterflies and all the happiness happened, we, fell in love and we did our little 16-year-old thing. And we went to prom together, and we were the first gay couple at our school to go to prom. I'm pretty sure we're the first gay couple in Vegas to go to prom. And it was one of those things.
You must have the most interesting trophies.
Like, it's crazy, right? Little sashes.
First gay couple in Vegas.
Wow. The lead gay of the fiefdom. I don't know. So sidebar really quick. Like, and that was before, like, it made national news in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Here we are. I mean, our principal was awesome. He was like, well, yeah, you guys are a couple, and it's not a big deal. I think the biggest deal about us going to prom was the photographer didn't know how to pose us. Like, he was like,
who's in back? Okay, fair enough.
But then his mom found out. His mom found our notes, because there were no text messages. There were notes.
Yeah.
And, poems again. And, like, whatever. And she tore him up, and she, like, locked him in the house. And she called me, and she's like, you're going to die, you little faggot. I hate you. And, and started sucking my mom. And it took that for my parents to be like, well, that's fucked. And I don't like, that's not good.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be those parents. And there was a lot of pain, and it was a lot of that. So, there was a lot of issue and drama and angst about this whole breakup and relationship and whatever. So I took my junior year of high school healing from that, and part of that healing was writing this play about an out teenager who's dating an in the closet, guy. And
very cool.
And I wrote it like we talked. I think that was the key to it. As I never tried to be something I was not, and I think. Just, tying it all in, people say to me about Mahal, oh, yeah, you're steeped in so much of the current technology and current things. Yeah. Like, aren't you worried about longevity of it? I'm like, no, I'm telling a story of right now. And this is, people use Grindr right now. People check into Facebook
It's so
right
true.
now.
I've never seen a play utilize that stuff because they're on their phones. They're doing like their version of whatever,
But that's how people talk. And like people, when,
it's such bullshit. Why would anybody say that when like the Sound of Music still runs? It's like they're still pumping water from a well in this play.
Me, like it wasn't like the playwright who wrote the story that featured the first telegram didn't worry about that.
Exactly,
it was a form of communication.
And if people have a problem with that, 20 years down the line, when there's another, if Mahal is it becomes one of these plays, well, okay, then they'll switch to the air phone or then you also people do love to update as well.
Sure.
But I mean, there's no need. I think that is just the needless. You focus on story and performance, and forget about that. That's just a dumb thing to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that was my key when I was
criticizing the critics right now.
Yeah, God. Well, no, that was my key though. I wrote the way that kids my age talked.
Yeah.
I wrote the story for the story. I didn't worry about however many years, because who knows? I mean, that's, to me, in a way too, that's almost egotistical. Like, oh, my play is so important that in 20 years they're going to be studying it in college. I mean, I want to tell a story. I want to tell a story that touches people, and if people like it enough that they'll study it in the future, great. But who knows? So I started writing this play. It got through my theater teacher. There was a weird change in administration with our department, and then the current theater teacher for my senior year read it, and I was organizing a workshop. I was like casting it. I was producing it. I was like shopping theaters, because that's who I am.
Nice, man.
But then the incoming theater department chair read it and was like blown away. And he said, and he had a theater company, so I was like, let's do it. Let's just put it up. And we did, and we cast all of the people I wanted to cast, because it was about kids. So, it was about teenagers. So we cast all of these teenagers who were all my friends and who I'd written these roles for. And we did it, and Mark, my ex-boyfriend, he saw it and he cried, and it was healing for him. Just having gone through what we went through.
How old were you?
I was at that point. I was 17 by the time it went up.
That's a strong piece. To write at that
people
age,
still talk. I mean, it's really weird.
What's it called?
It's called Closet Space.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then, but then that same theater teacher, and I love him, we're still really good friends. I was, again, 17. He said, actors are a dime a dozen, and I know you want to try directing. Because I took a course, I went to conservatory in San Francisco one summer, and I was like, I want to be a director too.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, actors are a dime a dozen. Maybe directing might be for you in the future, but you're a really good writer. You should focus on writing. And to me, at 17, my rebellious self was like, no, fuck you. I'm going to be an actor.
I'm going to be the actor.
I'm going to be the actor.
I'm going to be
really,
the guy and the actor.
I did. And so I got my degree in directing.
Yeah.
First I went into college, and I was a musical theater major. I'm like, oh, fuck this. And then I got my degree in directing.
Okay.
I started a theater company with a bunch of my friends right out of college. We put up our first show, and like it happens in Chicago, then you don't put up another show, because it's hard to start a theater company at 23. And I focused on acting again, and something just clicked. You know what it was, actually? It was getting onto the 10-year anniversary of Closet Space. And I started wondering, where are these characters now? And I mean, so sidebar too, I mean, I was in the sketch comedy scene for a while, so I'd been writing sketches.
Yeah, so you studied at Second City?
I did.
Well?
I studied at Second City.
Okay.
I went through conservatory, and then I went to then I did a directing workshop with Michael Gelman.
Nice.
So I wondered what would happen to these characters 10 years later. Are they still together? Are they not? And so I wrote the sequel to Closet Space, and it was called Hype. And again, it was one of those things that the director and I kept going back and forth. The director who helped me develop it and who got it to workshop. We kept going back and forth because there were so many things that were topical references at the time. Like, there were a lot of tabloid TV montages where I remember one of the things are like, this just in, Whitney Pierce found shaving her head in a gas station or something, or like left her kid.
Nice.
But
the whole Britney thing. Yeah.
So
see, now that's where people. I'm so surprised that anybody can hit you with criticism. I think that kind of writing should be celebrated, because you are creating forever like a footprint in time.
Yeah, well,
that we can look back on the same way we would enjoy watching a well done colonial piece.
And that's
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can't say I can only, but I write about what I know and what I like and what speaks to me. And so right now, as a writer a playwright early on in his career,
yeah.
I definitely am not straying too far away from my personal experience, just because I want to start my career writing as truthfully as possible. And there are certain things too. I'm running a play. I've been developing a play in my head and on page for the last couple of years now, that's set in Savannah, Georgia. That's a modern deconstruction of Uncle Tom's Cabin. And
okay.
But again,
so would that be your first somewhat departure from...
It would be. And
okay.
so, but that's
which is a great exercise.
Which is why I'm taking my time with it. So I'm planning a trip to Savannah in the next year or so, and just
nice.
To spend some time there, and getting to know the people, and then getting to know Southern culture. Southern culture freaks me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. The only time I spent in the South, they didn't know what to do with me.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from what I have found in the South, not Southern people, because I have lots of friends who are Southern. or who have Southern backgrounds. But what I have discovered in the South, my experience in the South, was a lot of things are very black and white. And if you're not black or white, they see you a certain way, and if you're not that certain way, they don't know what to do with you. So I'm the 6'1" Filipino American, speaks perfect English,
Yeah.
and they did not know what to do with me. It was really, I was there for a couple of weeks directing a show, and they were just like, I remember I was at a production dinner with at a restaurant with my producer, my designers, who were all white men, and the waitress was like, "And what will you be having? And what will you be having? What will you be having?" And she turned to me and she goes, "And what do you want?" And there was on a dime. It was.
So some of that stuff still lives. That is so
and
messed up,
and again,
man.
I can only speak to my specific experience of the South, and to
Yeah.
me, I want to not have that be my only experience of the South. It's not that I've.
This reminds me of of two goofy stories. One, I work with an amazing, talented Filipino vocalist, and she once told me that she was on stage, and again, perfect English. You can see when you look at her, okay, but grew up right around here, grew up in the burbs near Chicago, and I think she was on stage once, and she said, like the lead singer said, like, "And from the Philippines," and she was like, "What? I'm from Arlington Heights, I'm not from the Philippines." Like she couldn't
So
believe he said that.
international.
But and then as far as the Southern thing, it's where as a singer, I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of these like famous oldies people. Like I was getting jobs doing backgrounds for all these like old doo-wops, and I'm around these guys, and most of them are African American, and God, they're so amazingly talented, and their spirit is just so amazing, especially considering what they went through, which I forget because of my upbringing. I was brought up on this like old soul music and stuff, right? And I'll talk to these guys in the dressing room, just tell me what life was. You sang whatever, you sang Blue Moon, and you sang Lion Sleeps Tonight, and all these guys. But when it comes to like the African American guys, I'm like, oh my God, sometimes just the music that you guys did. Sometimes I wish I were a black guy in the 60s. And they're like, yeah, well, and they're no, you do not wish you were a black guy in the 60s. So those guys, I mean, the guys, who were told to drive to the big theater in Georgia or wherever, getting stopped and getting the shit that they went
and
through.
having to use different entrances and not being able to use the same dressing room. I mean, it's
hotels,
weird.
the whole thing.
People forget how not too far away that was. It's
not.
It's like
weird.
being gay in the 60s too. I mean, before Stonewall in 1969, I mean, it was illegal to congregate as homosexuals. And that's what the Stonewall riots were about. So, God, that's like 40-something, 50 years ago.
And to think that today I'll still see it. I'll still see some racism. I'll still see some, homophobia. But then I also have to say that I've seen the opposite too. My first experience meeting like a gay man was my mom had a hairdresser who would come over, Frankie, and that was my first time, and it was just, even conceptually, it was just a new like, wait, what's going? There's something. Yeah, there's something. And my dad, who's like this martial arts toughest guy I've ever met in my life, it was like almost afraid, like he was going to catch it. He's like, "Oh no, I got to get out of here, or I will long for the taste of penis." So when the hairdresser Frankie came over, my tough guy dad would leave the house.
Oh, Robby, if only that were true.
Cut to
I'll give the disease to everyone.
You just go around just touching everybody just from one touch. Like, well, I think I'm gonna go see that stripper. Oh wait, balls. I want balls all of a sudden.
All the balls.
What just happened? I don't know. That strange, tall Filipino man touched me.
Your chair has gotten a little closer since we started this conversation.
Already, see? Oh my God.
Happening.
You're like Lorelei or whatever from Marvel comic. Asgard.
From Asgard.
Maybe?
Oh my God.
We gotta still geek out.
Oh my God, yeah.
But cut to 10 years later, my dad's worked with singers and different, now it's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing to him.
Well, and I think too,
now he's worked with, so many, gay guys who are great guitarists, performers, and he's whatever,
And I think that's important. I think a lot of people our age, and, I mean, whereas, there's white guilt, there's also like, generational guilt. I feel like people are so eager to say, oh, well, that was in the past and we're in a different time. And yes, we are our times are progressing so much, and we have to appreciate that so much and keep it going. But we can't forget that not too long ago, this happened. Like the second we forget that and not live in it, we can't live in that. But like, and the same thing when people like talk about slavery and like, well, why do people have such a chip in their shoulder on their shoulder about it? It's like it happened. Yeah, it happened, and it was a part of our history. There's so many to this day. so societal constructs from how white people viewed their slaves and how that carried over and that we're still getting over now.
Yeah.
So yes, let's move forward, and yes, let's celebrate who we are as people, but we can't forget that
Right.
happened.
And
it was
I think-
only 100 years ago.
And I think it's a tricky line to walk because I think both sides have to consent.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
You know, I think we have to recognize the pain and the struggles that anybody who had pain and struggle went through.
Yes.
But then the other side of the field has to also appreciate when there is progress. You know, I think
Yes.
somebody who's living well, who's doing well, and who gets treated well can't suddenly, yeah, but 100 years ago, my ancestors were like, wait a minute, you
Yeah.
live in a penthouse, you're doing great,
Yeah.
And I think both sides, if both sides can learn to let go of the hate and of the badness, and if they can do it in unison, then we're set.
Well, I think
Then
it's-
we're set.
I think what has to happen is people can't be afraid to ask questions about culture, and
Yeah.
and on the flip side of it, people have to be willing to have those conversations about culture. Not a lot, Asian American culture. Filipino, even with the Filipino culture, there are a lot of questions that people don't realize about it. How different it is from every other Asian culture, and that was a lot of what I was doing during Mahal when I was talking about
Answering questions.
Yeah, which is, but you have to be ready for those questions, and
Yeah.
I feel like, you're right. Both sides have to be ready for it, and I feel like one side is like, well, why can't people just get over what happened in the past? And the other side is, well, why can't we just be where we want to be? And it's like, no, it's not that easy.
Not that easy.
It's not that easy.
Yeah.
You have to be able to, you have to find the courage to ask the question, because when you ask the question, you are in essence revealing ignorance, and not in a bad way of ignorance, but the literal, I do not know this about your culture.
Yeah.
Please explain it to me. And you as the person receiving the question has to be able to say, yes, I'm willing to have this conversation and talk you through things. I mean, as an Asian American gay male, I don't know a lot about, other cultures, and I'm constantly asking. And maybe I just have that much more of a safety or a bubble or comfort because, maybe I come from a culture that's non-mainstream. I'm non-white. So for me to ask this question might be it might be less scary for me to ask it than a white person asking, but we still have to have that conversation. We still have to have those conversations.
Oh, it's so weird.
Yeah.
There's so many closed doors still, just mentally.
Yeesh.
Well, so I have to say this. I want to ask this because I feel like at some point I have to service anybody out there that's, I'm thinking about the business or anything.
Oh, sure,
If you are a writer today and you want something to hit the stage, what do you do? You're in Chicago. What do you do?
You have to, and I have actually a buddy that's going through this right now. And he sees what I'm doing. He's like, how did you do that? I mean, I don't want to say it was right place, right time, because I spent a lot of time getting to the place I'm at now and knowing the people that I'm at now.
You were acting and directing in the city for quite a bit before.
Yeah. And
Okay.
with, just to kind of preface how Mahal happened, so maybe the answer comes in there. After I'd, gone through was healing from my father passing, this weird relationship, I wrote this play, and I was working, the people at Silk Road Rising, which is a theater dedicated to the experience of South Asians, Middle Easterners, and Asian cultures, told through that lens. I'd been working with them for quite a bit. Jillian, too. Jillian Jackson, who is our mutual friend.
Yeah.
So we were working on the fall gala, and I just happened to mention, really breezily, oh yeah, I just finished my, one of my latest plays, and to the artistic director, and he said, great, let's host a table read of it. Let's, get everyone you'd ever want to read it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome, thank you. And
wow. And I just started learning about table reads, by the way, to people that don't really know what that is.
Table reads are where you literally just sit around a table and read a script. And in the TV and film world, it's the first day of shooting,
right?
And the writers come in with their drafts. The cast reads it, and then the writers take notes.
Yeah, I was actually getting that mixed up with the performance. What is the performance? There's a reading.
Oh, so yeah, so let's let's talk through the process. Usually, so that's how it happens in the TV and film world. In the playwriting world, more often than not, a playwright will just say, hey, I just finished this draft. Well, this is how I do it. I just finished this draft. I need to hear it. I need to see. Well, first I need to hear it, and second I need to see if there's actually anything here. I've just been jacking off for 100 pages, which is true.
Oh,
people
sure.
do.
No.
And you need to hear it. You need to hear there's nothing here. It was a good exercise. And then you say thank you. And you take the bits that you like and you put them in your file. And then one day you'll write a play where you need like this sort of exchange and you've had it.
Now, along those lines, to sidebar very quickly, have you ever had the experience where you feel like maybe it's not working, maybe you even had a table read, but then you dive back into the same material and hear different voices reading your lines, and all of a sudden through maybe some of the actors, have you ever had that happen where, oh, wow, this guy, maybe there's something here that I didn't see because of the performer? Has that ever happened?
It's weird. I mean, for me, because I've come as an actor and as a director, so I'm already coming into whatever process, or even as I write scripts, ready to collaborate. I don't write as much on the page as a lot of playwrights do. Most playwrights tend to overwrite, and I have been accused of underwriting when certain literary managers have requested scripts of mine and have said, wait, can you send me the whole thing? Because they look at the page count. I'm like, no, that's the whole thing. And it's because I trust directors and actors to fill those moments.
When you say that you leave room purposely, are you putting points? Are you saying, no matter what, I need you to get from here to here?
No,
or are you just giving like, there's 3 lines here. What lets an actor know? Like, okay, there are 3 lines to my dialogue right now, but it could be 7 lines. Like,
I don't know. I mean,
how does that work?
I'm really lucky that in the last, I mean, this is not helpful at all, but but literally, I've been really lucky.
How can you confuse other writers right now? Go.
Right now. Well, so I guess here's the thing. Right now, get really smart friends, really smart, talented friends.
Nice, yeah.
Really build your network with people that you trust, and that people who will call you on your shit, that won't just, stroke your ego.
Great.
And be ready to listen to it. Yeah. But I've been very lucky since my whole time in Chicago to collaborate with really smart, talented, respectful, artists, actors, directors, writers on the other side. And so when I have started making this transition and I was having table reads, I would invite my friends who are good actors and really smart and have great feedback. And so they would tell me what it was like, what was up, but also I also write to their voices. So it's knowing that, a 2-line exchange, like a 3-word line in context that will communicate years of a relationship by this particular actor, knowing how their brain works, knowing how they process character, knowing how they're inhabiting this character. I can accomplish that in 3 words. And that was a lot of the process with, as we were workshopping Mahal, is how much support do we need? Because I underwrote it. How much support do we need? So I wrote this, so we had the table read, everybody was perfect, and it was that kismet of right place, right time, but in a way, strategic right place and right time, because I'd written one of the roles for one of my dearest friends. She's like my oldest sister, and she plays the eldest sister, Kate Garasino. I mean, she's perfect.
She was amazing. She's amazing.
Yeah. And I love her. And I was not a company member at Bailiwick Chicago at the time, and she's the executive director. And after she read it, and to me, it was just I was a playwright that wanted to hear his words and see if there's anything there. And the post read discussion was just as long, if not longer, than the actual read, because no one had told this story. No, and all the Filipino American actors were like, "Oh my God, I get to like be me." And Kate was so passionate about it, and she said, "We want to do this with Bailiwick," and she got the script and threw it at everybody at Bailiwick. So Silk Road, in the meantime, was like, well, we kind of want to do it too. We're thinking, we're trying to find a slot for it. So they had 2 companies. It's a dream situation. It'd taken me about 6 months to write this draft. I had 2 companies, highly respectable, reputable companies who I'd worked with, and I love both of them.
Yeah, just
6 months after I'd written this
wanted
draft,
man.
They were wanting.
That's great.
Yeah. So then after all the logistics got sorted out, we decided that Silk Road Rising would do the developmental staged reading. So to your other question, from table read, then goes to staged reading, where you have book in hand, and you have a director who you take I think the standard is a week of rehearsal. You're putting it on its feet. You're seeing what the actors look like.
And there's an audience for that.
And there's an audience.
For the stage read, right?
Yeah, and so you're putting it up on its feet, and you're like moving people around. And as a writer, you're always rewriting. And I mean, for that stage reading, we had blue pages, yellow pages. We just everything, because drafts kept changing, and it was great. We got almost I think we got the whole cast back from the previous the first table read, I think there was like one change because of a conflict. And from that, so Silk Road Rising did the staged reading a year before Bailey Wick Chicago slated it for production. In that time, Eric Heiko... actually, there's two parts of this story. In that time, Eric Heiko, who I wrote the lead for, who was perfect, who brought exactly what I wrote on the page to life in the way I heard it. I knew he was going to do it.
Where did he have to go?
He got in grad school at Columbia as a production major. And he's great. I mean, I literally just saw him on Monday because I was just in New York, and we were having a great time. Anyway, but he's great. I love him. But he broke my heart a little bit because it's like, who are we going to find as Mikey? So we had auditions, and within that, we found we had a handful of actors who were all really good, and were giving me what was on the page, like Eric gave me on the page. And then this one guy came up named Kevin Matthew Reyes, and he's like, hi, and he did his, and it was not what I wrote on the page, but it was not wrong. And it was me and the director just turning each other, and there was just something electric about this actor.
Wow. That's well put, by the way. You won't hear many writers say it's not what I wrote on the page, but it's not wrong.
It's not wrong,
So that's great.
So, we called him back and we read him, and it got to the point in the night where we sent every Mikey home, and we were just reading him with the guy that would play the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And
that guy was really good too, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I've never seen him before.
We were
everybody.
Everybody. We were really lucky. So we had this guy who was right for the role, but not necessarily. But the role that I had written wasn't necessarily there yet. I mean, and that's the beauty of working on new work, So as we sat down to, we did 3 weeks of workshopping the play before we started officially blocking it. There were so many things that were changed to what you ended up seeing in terms of who that character was, and it was all based on what Kevin brought, who he was as a person. Yeah. And Erica Weiss, our director, who's amazing. She's like the new play director of Chicago. She's like the best at it. We went back and forth on what is this kid's journey. His journey is the whole show. What is his journey, and what does he need to learn, and what are the obstacles he needs to come to? So, because this actor came in and just was him and authentically him and did what he did and didn't worry about, I don't know if he didn't worry about it, but he was him, and he brought what only he could bring to this role. It ended up shaping the whole play. And the same thing happened with, in a weird roundabout way, with the character Kendall, the Caucasian girl. Uh-huh. Honestly, on the complete superficial level, I wrote, a big part of this play was in honor of my dad, and I wanted to give my dad a trophy girlfriend. The dad character trophy girlfriend.
So explain, in the play, the father figure, ends up.
Yeah, the father's a widower at the beginning of the play, and he hires an interior designer to redecorate his house.
She's a younger, attractive girl.
Very
so
attractive.
He ends up. So that, wow! Like,
and so
in the intangible world, that was away from the story. That was you giving a gift to your father.
Yeah, it was like, and it's no disrespect to my mom, but it's like who's still living and is a saint, and I love her. But he, there was.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there was a part. Okay, so digression. I'll allow myself to do this. I was really Jillian Jockson and I actually did a show with David Henry Wong, who, if you don't know who he is, he hates that I call him this, but he's like the godfather of Asian American theater.
Now, this was the gentleman who first had the father role. I don't think I got this.
So
it was this guy who ended up there.
David Henry Wong is a prolific playwright. He's amazing. He won the Tony for M. Butterfly in in the 80s. He was one of the first. He is the first Asian American to win a Tony.
Oh, this is a guy and you met him and you were able to keep your cool.
Yeah. But it was that Jillian and I worked on that show together. Okay. So he's become a mentor to me, and he's amazing. And
nice.
And I'm really lucky to know him and be able to like ask him questions about things. But the play that Jillian and I worked on him with, Yellowface, there's this beautiful. There's the play is all about this hype and hoopla and controversy, but at the heart of it is a play about a son dealing with the death and the scandal surrounding his father's death. Huh. And there are these beautiful moments of the father realizing, as a Chinese American immigrant, that how he sees himself is not how the rest of America sees him. And there's this beautiful monologue he goes on about how when he was in China, he would watch these movies like Fred Astaire, and that's who he saw himself as.
Oh, wow.
And And I think that's true of a lot of Asian American immigrant men who come to this country. There is emasculating quality about coming to America, and we are not seen as men, which is a huge movement right now in the Asian American artistic community. But with that, my father always had that. Like, I felt like my father always had that too. He had to work that much harder as he was networking, or as he was doing these things.
Geez,
and
yeah.
so, which is in a way where I learned a little bit of my hustle, I suppose. But he, my like charm and like my schmoozing. But I wanted to give him a moment where where this younger girl, this beautiful girl, this trophy girl,
American girl,
fawned over him.
Yeah.
Like, he was a sexual being.
Yeah.
And it was not to me, I didn't want it to be in a creepy way. I wanted it to be this natural evolution of what a relationship was.
It played well.
But it ended up playing well, but on page at the very beginning,
Was it creepy?
It was. There is a creepy element to it in terms of, no matter what the race, older man, younger woman, there's always a little, weirdness to it. But definitely when I started writing her, she was very she was not as intelligent as she ended up being on stage.
Okay, interesting.
And a big part of that was my dear friend Blair Robertson. I was on Facebook one day, and we had already announced the auditions, and we were getting the lists, and our casting director was vetting people, and I get this Facebook chat from my friend Blair Robertson, and she says, "I'm auditioning for your." She goes, "By the way, you'll be seeing me. I'm reading for you," and I'm like, "We have one equity contract, and it's already going to Joseph Anthony Ferranda, who played the father," and she goes, "Well, I'm not equity anymore," and it was a game changer right
now
away.
Explain, because I've just recently started learning more about the equity thing. Explain that to the lay people out there.
Oh, sure. So Actors Equity is the actors union, and what that, as any union, it protects its members to receive a certain wage, a certain working environment. In terms of what that means to work in Chicago storefront theater, because Chicago storefront theater is very we're a poor theater. We're all doing it for the passion of it, and in ways, everyone has their different reasons to do it, but finances is definitely not one of their main reasons.
So you can have like one equity player, or you can.
There are tiers there are tiers in the contracts, and most storefront theaters don't have any equity tiers at all. And Bailiwick Chicago has not ever had an equity tiered contract until we did Mahal. And it was that need, it was a very special need of an Asian American male of a certain age,
sure,
of a certain seasoning. And in Chicago, logistically in Chicago, there's only one person that could really do that role, which was Joseph Anthony Ferranda. But I also wrote it for him because he's a friend of mine, and he's good, and he's great, and he's lovely. I wanted him to play this role, and we were paying him the bare minimum that we could. We like our representative at Actors Equity is like, great, we will release a tier contract fee.
These are those trials and tribulations that not as many people are aware of. These are all the little details that somebody who's just right now writing script, and I'm writing a script and it's going to happen.
Yeah, you have to be
all these little details. They need to know.
Well, you have to. Yes, you have to be, as you're writing script. It's weird.
You want to write as a writer.
You want to write as a writer.
It's what happens when your pages are finished.
Yeah.
Then you have to switch over. It's like in anything, you're suddenly, it's so tricky about the arts because we all learn how to be artists. We're writers, we're singers, we're actors, whatever. But then at some point you have to almost you have to turn into a business person.
You have to, yeah.
And there's a disconnect there that a lot of people end up, not properly educating themselves to be ready for that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they end up screwed. And it sucks when it's somebody so talented, where the work should be out there.
Yeah, and you have to be savvy. You have to, even early on in your career, even as I'm, as my writing career is taking off, you have, as in Chicago, you have to be in the storefront scene, especially, you have to be mindful of what the return on what your investment is. I do a lot of theater. I do a lot of acting for, very little money because I love the project. I love the people I'm about to do it with. And that's, I love the company. And that's true of a lot of people.
Yeah.
In terms of, as a writer, my royalty, there's a standard royalty. I went down a little bit, for Mahal, knowing the logistics of the company. But then we, talked about development fees. You have to, be savvy about how you approach things, especially when you're just starting to get your work out. What is the return? If, knowing full well that my company, Baylor Chicago, has a good reputation, it was just a smart pairing. So I could come down on my price a little bit, knowing that it would whatever, or what my price should be.
Yeah.
I'm also at a different place in my career, and, how I've established myself in the theater world altogether to be able to do that. So for a writer who's just starting out, you have to really look at what is the return on your investment. If you're going to get a lot of really good exposure because it's a really good company, and you're not going to necessarily make any money on it, maybe that is a good return on your investment, because then it's something on your resume, that's something to put out there. But if you're also going to be killing yourself to on rewrites and pulling all-nighters and then working your day job, maybe you have to relook at that investment.
Well, then I guess to still think of the young actors out there or writers out there, because what you did is you kind of submerged yourself into the culture. You were writing, you were directing, you made the right friends, and then when you were ready and you launched a piece, suddenly, it's not like you were a stranger. Are there other avenues? Like what would you have done if you hit town and you were already, whatever, you did all of your, you worked on your acting, directing chops elsewhere, but you hit town and you had a script, that 10-year-old, Danny Bernardo mentality. What does that guy do right now?
First thing I do is I have the script in my hand. I have my script, right?
Okay.
It's in my bag. And I go, if I'm brand new to town, I go to theaters. I research who are the people I need to know, what are the theater companies I want to work with.
As far as the people, you're looking for the people who run said theaters or producers or
sure, that's one way
directors.
to put it. But people, and again, it's like that split of, artistic versus business.
Right.
I look at the people who inspire me, like whose work. I go to see, I go to see plays, all the, from as diverse an offering as I could possibly can from different theater companies. I'm like, wow, that director, that actor, that in that one play or this play, I like what they're saying. I want to get to know them, and I try to meet people. If you go to a storefront, if we're talking specifically the Chicago scene, if you go to a storefront theater, and you go see a play, more often than not, people are hanging out after the show, and more often than not, they're going to go to the bar after the show, and you go and you talk to these people. Yes, you have this play that you're burning to. You have to understand the world you're about to get into before you pitch it.
Yeah.
Before you start going in. Because one, people have to know you. People have to trust you. You can't just be like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do this.
As soon as you show up and
who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Who are you?
If your first two sentences are, it's like I'm a writer or I have a script, I mean, they've just turned you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've just,
Yeah. I mean,
gone.
you can say that in your, oh, so what do you do? Oh, I'm a writer. And but from then, you have to build relationships and meaningful relationships.
Yeah, don't open. Let them ask.
Yeah, I mean, and I get artsy with it, but really, the relationships you build in the theater shouldn't be what can this person do for me. It's I like this person and what they say and what they do.
Great.
And that's when your success happens. For me, I can only speak from my experience. I have surrounded myself, and I'm lucky to be in people's circles.
You're fans of each other.
We're fans of each other.
Yeah.
We're each other's biggest supporters.
I think what helps there is that, the same way, as a writer, you're writing a piece that means something to you, and then it's out there, and you feel good about that, because I think it's with anything that you create. If there's something real behind it, it's going to resonate somewhere. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to feel that, like, oh, there's something here, It doesn't even have to be your story, but if it's something that means something to you, and I think it's the same thing when you're meeting people. I think anybody worth their salt, anybody with half a brain can tell when somebody is just coming up to you because they know you can help them. But if you approach somebody as a legitimate fan or as a person who you don't even have to be a fan,
as an
artist who respects the other artist, and you're actually giving them your feedback, I mean, suddenly it's as real as your work. It resonates, and they feel it, and then they know, like, wow, I'm talking to somebody who, okay, sure, maybe we can help each other, but it's for the right reasons.
Yeah,
again,
absolutely. And I mean, it's true. It's this business. It's about who you know, but not necessarily people in high places. Mm-hmm. It's about the relationships you cultivate and the respect that you burn, that you build both ways. The respect you burn,
the people that you kill and put in your car. You got a little dark for a second. like almost admitted,
The people who say no, and then you just have to get some chloroform, and you just have to, I don't know. I mean,
does this smell like chloroform? Wait, no, here's my plate. Read my plate. No, it's a cool thing, and not to say whatever. There are some great assholes out there who can just talk the talk and schmooze and bullshit their way in as well, I think the preference and longevity, because eventually those are also the people that they're going to be respected for what they can accomplish, but then they're also the same people that have no respect once they leave the room.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. If we're talking, people just starting out who just arrived, the city. You have to look at people. You really have to look at people, not what they can do for you, but what. There's this one playwright, I will not name them, and they have yet to have something produced.
Oh, I wish you had enough Irish cream so that you would be naming names.
This person is not even worth naming because they.
Oh snap!
Yeah, I'm not. Girl, look. No, no, I mean, and I don't mean that. Yeah. I mean, okay, that sounded very disrespectful.
No, but you're being honest. Somebody's done it wrong.
They're doing it completely wrong. They show up. They in ways they're doing it right. They show up to openings. Okay. They show up and support the show. They go to the right places at the right times. But when they get there, they go about it the whole wrong way. They're like, we don't know this person. It literally is who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Like, who are you? And it's not in the terms of, oh, what have you done? It's who are you? Because all they do is say, oh, I've got this play. I need you. That's
opening. That's that terrible opening.
And they go to the producers and go to directors. Well, I mean, I've got this play, and and you're just I've seen this person at openings. It is this thing where people just walk the other way because we know what to expect from them. And it's,
I mean, actors, writers, artists out there that are trying to break into it. Look at it this way, I guess I'm having a sidebar with listeners. But look at it this way: if just as a friend, if you're just meeting somebody for the first time and you come up to them and your first words are "Feed me, can you feed me? Do you have a burger?" That person's not going to be your friend.
No, it's
But if you go in oh, I heard about you from whatever. My friend Michelle says you're hilarious. Blah 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 blah. Well, after knowing that person for a while, I'll bet you they buy you a burger someday.
Absolutely.
But don't go in saying "Give me a burger."
It's like marketing too. If you've seen the movie Party Monster, I do marketing as a day job and consulting as well. But
oh god, that's great.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I've tried to tell my clients in the past. They're like, oh, push, sell. I'm like, no, because if you've seen the movie Party Monster, there's that scene where Macaulay Culkin's character is just starting to throw parties, and as opposed to promoting it a certain way, he walks around all the bars with flyers going, come to my party, 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 and nobody wants to know that person. And it wasn't until he changed his tactic that people went to his party,
Yeah.
And but I think it's that person goes about it wrong. It's yes, we all appreciate passion and your work, but who are you? And I think especially nowadays, who you are is just, and not who you are is just as important as what you do, and not in he's a name or she's a name, but who you are as a person.
And I know we're not even. It's not even an insult. It's not even saying, hey, you're a jerk for even thinking about this, because I know that it's hard. I know that it's hard. If you have this piece and you're dying, I know no matter how nice and true you're being and you want to meet this person as a person, of course, every fiber of your being is, oh my God, I just want to show him the script. So it's understandable. It's human. It's okay.
Human. Oh God,
just fight that urge as best as you can. But at the same time, I don't want people who have the urge to think, oh great, you guys on the podcast think I'm an asshole.
I'm just going to do what I'm going to do.
You're not an asshole, but I understand that, because my gosh, you meet somebody that can help you. Of course.
Yeah, I've got. No, trust me, I get it better than anyone.
Just be patient. Just be patient.
I've got 3 scripts in the hands of literary managers right now. I'm like, oh my God, tell me what you think. Tell me what you want to do with it. I'm not going to pester them, but it's like, you need to tell the story now.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's. When you're first starting out, you have to meet people, you have to understand. But then when you get to that place where you're starting to show your work to people, ask them for feedback. Be ready to hear the feedback.
Right.
Because you got to take the ego. You have to, and and I'm not. I mean, this is how I live my life, and I am suggesting people when you have a piece, you have to take the ego out. You have to take the you out of it. I mean, a lot of like as we were talking about, a lot of my work now as I'm starting to build out is starting very personal, like very logistically, specifically personal, and it's branching out. That's my goal. But even with how personal and autobiographical moments are, you have to take that out. You know, you have to. It's not you. It's the piece right now. And if you have built this relationship and you really respect this artist, and you really trust this artist with this relationship you've built, to be able to give that artist your piece and say, "What do you think?" You have to be ready to hear what they think, and they may not like it, or they might like parts of it, and you have to be ready to hear it, and you have to take from it what you will to make it a better piece. Now, you can't say, fuck you, I wrote this and I know this, but you can't also say they're completely right and my piece sucks and I'm going to completely rewrite it. You have to find that middle ground.
If you wrote Jaws and then suddenly they're like, no, you know what, this has to be about
this is the color purple. It's color purple.
Yeah, this has to be about an angry school of guppies. Like, no, okay, then I understand. Hold your ground.
Yeah.
But at the same time, understand your own piece. But see, I mean, hey, if somebody tells you that tie just looks like shit with that suit, well, try another tie and at least see.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I think that's cool. I feel like we've helped. Hopefully,
I hope so.
Well, there's so many different approaches, but I'm a fan of this approach. I'm a fan of being a person. Going out there without the sales pitch. And because you're doing it right, and then you're actually getting true peers and friends along the way.
Yeah.
Now I have to geek out for a sec, and the only reason I have to is because I heard you were like a comic book guy. I'm a huge comic book geek.
Yeah.
Okay, when I saw Mahal, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, like exactly who you like in comic book land, but I thought. My first, I think, I was a big reader. I was more of an English student than anything else, and that's why writing came to me before anything else. But I attribute so much of, any excelling I did in the English department, first and foremost, was from reading comic books.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
And especially dialogue. And I'll even go further. It's carried over into film because it's the best storyboards you'll ever see.
Well, and logistically, too. I mean, logistically, the writing scripts for comic books is so similar to writing scripts for...
Right, it's true.
It's so true.
People don't realize that, there was some point where comic books, they were all wonderful writers, in their right. But at some point, I don't know if it was... I can't remember when I left comics and then came back. I have a younger brother who was just constantly trying to bring me back. And it was like Frank Miller stuff that he was trying to bring me back to. And I wasn't ready, but then I read something. It was like a Daredevil book, probably one of the Elektra thing. It
was probably Miller's run of it.
And I remember thinking, holy crap. At some point, script writers, novelists, like true writers were writing, and it's been going on ever since. This is not a 13-year-old. If you go to a comic shop, you're reading like heavy stuff. Wonderful. Some of the best stories I've read over the last 10 years have been comic books, oddly enough. And when I saw Mahal, there was a cadence to some of the dialogue, and I thought, this guy is a comic book guy, and because there's a rhythm and a beat.
Yep.
Some of the best dialogue writing I've read has been in comic books, but truly, like the best thing that I've read, hands down, was a run on the X-Men,
Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon, yeah.
Yes.
And then as soon as Joss went away, no respect to John Cassaday, but as soon as Joss went away, the storytelling changed.
Yes.
Here's the thing with Astonishing specifically, was Joss is really Mr. Whedon. We were talking about earlier before we started.
And that's where you geeked out.
I fanboyed out. I know. I never fanboy out over people, and I almost wept. Okay, here's the thing.
I've never seen anybody balance that out, by the way. But yeah, tell me your Joss Whedon story.
So I was at Comic-Con last year, and it was...
And you were dressed up? That's when
I dress up, but like not like we were talking about earlier, and I'll show you on my Instagram page. He'll show you my Instagram photos. I dress up as easy cosplay. Like, I'm Asian American, so I'll just throw blood and dirt on me, and I'm Glenn from Walking Dead. Crazy.
Were you Glenn when you met Joss Whedon?
I was not Glenn when I met Joss Whedon.
Okay.
But... was I? No, I was not.
So you met Joss. What happened?
Okay, well, here's the thing, right? So when you go to Comic-Con, and I'm talking, the term Comic-Con gets thrown about so loosely, but Comic-Con, Mothership Comic-Con, San Diego International, you have to give your firstborn child to get tickets to Comic-Con. It's so hard to get tickets. It's ridiculous. But so I went, and I'm not the guy that stands in line for people. I'm not the guy that does whatever. But Joss Whedon is one of my inspirations, one of my living heroes as a writer, as a director, as an artist. He's amazing. And not only that, but his politics and what he thinks and how he views the world, I'm just a big fan of all around.
Okay.
So I remember going to Ballroom 6, and sorry.
There you go. That's what I get for feeding everybody like Irish cream and coffee.
So I remember.
By the way, just so you know, this seems to happen at like the hour 20 mark. There's somebody's always. It happened to Jason Brooks. I think he's just like, yeah.
So
we've reached. It's like the 7th inning stretch. We've reached the hour 20-minute gurgle. So anyway, you're in front of Joss Whedon's face. I just want to know what happened when you're like face to face with this guy. What did you do?
Oh my God! So I got up. I got up at like 6 a.m. in the morning on Saturday because I knew he was going to be at the Dark Horse booth to sign.
Of course
books.
you did. Total fanboy day.
But that was going to be on Sunday. Okay. So I was like, okay, but they're going to give out tickets. They're going to give out tickets, and it's a ticketed event. So I have to get there. I mean, to get there, what getting to Comic-Con at 6 a.m. in the morning means is that you stand in line to be able to get into the room. So everybody does it. Like I never did. I would just like, yeah, fuck this. I'm just gonna wake up and go to Comic-Con whenever I want. You know, and I stood in line and it was just like, oh my god. And the second the doors opened, I ran and I pushed. Like I was like, it was like I was a suburban mom on Black Friday at Walmart. It was crazy. And I ran to the Dark Horse booth and they're like
knocking down women and children on your way
with like 48-inch flat TV. So
nice.
I'm knocking people out of the way and I go to the Dark Horse booth and like, oh, you know, we're not giving out tickets yet. You know, I'm like, great. I'm standing in line for tickets, and I'm like the third person in line. I'm gonna get these tickets. I'm gonna get tickets to see Joss Whedon and meet him and shake his hand, and it's gonna be amazing. And and then so the line starts and they open up the thing and they're like, all right, you guys. So to be fair, because we have many ticketed events, you get to choose which ticketed event. Yay! Everyone's like, yay! But here's how you get to choose. You put your hand in this bucket. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh God!
You put your hand in this bucket and you pull out a bead.
They're scorpions.
They're scorpions. And if you really love Joss Whedon, you will live.
Perfect.
They're like, there's a red bead and a black bead. And if you pull out a red bead, then you get to choose your ticket. And if you're a black bead, then you don't, you know, blah, 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 blah.
It's like the Matrix.
I'm like, what the fuck? And so thankfully, I pulled out a red bead.
Oh, God.
So again, I got up the next morning. I got my Joss Whedon ticket. I got up the next morning, 6 a.m. to be one of the first to, because I wanted to take pictures. I wanted to shake his hand. And I knew that by the end of the line, if I was like the last one, they'd have been like, and I was fanboying out. I was like, no, but can I take a picture? Is it a thing? Can I take a picture? And everyone at the booth was like, this kid is going to have an aneurysm. I'm like, no, but seriously, if I give you my phone, will you take a picture? Okay, great. And, you know, I was like the third person in line, and I got up, and they had the camera, and they took a picture, and I shook his hand, and he has a very nice handshake. And he signed my two trades. I actually had to buy new ones because I didn't think to like I don't bring trades with me because I mean,
wait, what did he sign? What did he sign?
He signed season 9 of Buffy.
Okay.
And he signed the first 2 volumes of Astonishing.
And your words to Joss were?
My words were, so as a writer, I just really respect you, and you're like a huge inspiration to me. And I wrote this play called Mahal, and it's running right now in Chicago.
Did you do like the exact opposite of what we've been telling all the writers to do?
We just talked about.
Here's my script. Take it.
No, I didn't
be my
give them
friend.
my script. I didn't get my script. I was like, you know, I'm a writer and blah blah blah, and I just really respect you and your inspiration. And I wrote a play called Mahal, and it's running right now in Chicago.
Nice.
And he's like, you wrote a play called Mahal? I'm like, you just said the name of my play. And I almost cried.
So then, what else did you say before security tased you and dragged you out?
That I was his illegitimate child, and
so was it like a blur?
It was a complete blur, and you can see the evolution because they just kept taking pictures of me. And he was very lovely. You can see in all the pictures.
Yeah,
he wasn't like freaked out at all. He is of a certain success, and he's another one where when you go to Comic-Con, you know, you get a bunch. Comic-Con has become very Hollywood since Twilight. Everyone attributes it to the timing of Twilight when people started coming, and you can tell the difference of, you know, Hollywood people, you know, actors, you know, that come and they, you know, they do the promotional things that they have to do.
They see the power of it. The big time Hollywood stars know the power of Comic-Con now.
Fanboys and fangirls, we are a passionate bunch and we're a loyal bunch. When we get behind your brand, your movie, whatever, we will stick with you. And we're our dollars are very powerful in that, and we're very, if, we're very social online. So if we love something, we'll tweet it, we'll Instagram, we'll do everything, which is why it's very smart. But there is, again, an authenticity to when Hollywood types come into Comic-Con and you're like, okay, you're just here to promote and then you're going to leave.
Yeah.
Where Joss Whedon himself is a fanboy. I've written an article. I wrote an article called Joss Whedon, King of Geeks or something like that. It was like, but it's true. He
wrote comics too.
He wrote comics,
Yeah.
but even before then, it's like the reason
He
why
was
he
a fanboy.
Yeah, the reason he could write comics and because he has this certain voice is because he is one of us.
Yeah.
And that's why I think so many people champion him, and that's why I feel when he meets fans, it's always very authentic. The story I was starting to say, which inspired me to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, was Dark Horse was doing because there are panels at Comic-Con, and it's, they vary from like how to break into the business or, the work of Image Comics to, meeting, like seeing celebrity panelists talk about their work. And so it was advertised as Dark Horse Comics presents Joss Whedon talking about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic book.
Okay.
I mean, and I wasn't really current
He
on the
wrote those books? He kept writing?
He kept writing.
Okay.
He executive produced those books, so because they're all canon.
I loved Serenity, by the way, the movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean...
I went back. I didn't know about that series.
Firefly? Yeah.
Until I saw Serenity.
There is very few...
Then I went back
There's very few Joss Whedon stuff I don't like. First of all, I saw... Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They gave us a sneak peek of the pilot and we all freaked out, which is why I'm still a champion of the show, even though it's still going through its growing pains.
Well, you know what? I was just talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I thought I'm the fanboy who's like holding on because I think it got a little dull, almost campy at times. And I'm like, oh, great. And then I think the last like 3 episodes, I don't know how many there have been, 16, 13.
Yeah, I think we're in the back 9 right now, and I think we're in the first, so we're in the back 9, so I think there's like 7 left.
I feel like the last 3, they actually focus on a few things. Having a few characters almost pass, and they've. I'm starting to care about the characters, but then finally this last one where they brought in Lady Sif. Like,
oh my
they
God,
brought the Asgard from
my
Thor,
God.
and there was action. There was kick-ass action. That was a fun short film.
That last episode.
It was the first time.
The Lady Sif
Yes.
Lorelai episode was a great episode.
So anybody that got on board and like they're just like, screw this, I hate it, and blah blah blah.
Get back in, man.
Just watch the last one and then see what that does for you.
Okay, now here's the thing. All right, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Right. So complete full disclosure, because I sat in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. panel in July and watched it, and then they gave us this sneak peek. So there's 6,000 fanboys and fangirls watching, like not expecting a sneak peek, getting this magic sneak peek, and it was a really good pilot. It's a really good pilot, and with Joss Whedon, why he's so great at, like, why Astonishing was so great, why Buffy is so great, why Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the pilot, was so great, is he is really good at the mission statement of a show. He's really good at when they write the show Bible and putting that metaphoric mission statement. He is so good at that. Astonishing X-Men was supposed to be the public PR face of the X-Men. We only show them doing good and trying to make good, and that's what was true. And then when he left, that mission statement sort of dissipated, but that was what I wanted to see. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the mission statement is high school is hell. Life is hell, and the metaphor comes through, in the form of, demon ex-girlfriends and all this other stuff. But that metaphor rings true throughout the whole series. I think what was beautiful about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. panel, granted, I was having this amazing
You were already high on life.
Experiential, 6,000 people.
Your astral form was.
Yeah, we were like 6,000 fans cheering at references and like Lola. We're like, wow, Lola. But what was exceptionally beautiful about.
It's a very high pitched crowd you had there.
When we it was in that last act, the mission statement of the show to me was when the Mike character played by J. August Richards, who was Gunn in Angel, is he's having that standoff. Spoilers, even though it's been months, he's having the standoff with everybody after he's been souped up with powers.
Yeah.
And he's like, I was just a regular guy, and now I'm living in a world where gods like walk among men, and people like have iron suits and fly around, and what do we do? Where does that leave us regular people? And to me, that's the mission statement.
It's a great character study. It is,
and to me, that's what they're starting to get back into, is how it affects the general populace. And so I think I think say what you will about the series so far. Like, it's everyone's opinion is not wrong and it's not right.
Right.
It's, your opinion of it. I feel like the fan community holds Joss Whedon to such a high regard
Yes.
that you're expecting gold right out the gate. People forget that first season of Buffy was not necessarily the best. It was a lot of exposition. It was a lot of figuring out who these characters are, what their relationships were. And then you start getting into the gold. In season 2, you've got to give a show time to find its voice.
Yeah, which is tricky these days. you
Yeah.
know? People forget that like Seinfeld was like by the numbers like a failure. By the way,
Absolutely.
like for 2 seasons, maybe more.
So
Well, but not only that, the great thing about Joss Whedon, God, we're geeks right now. We're such geeks right now. But the great thing about him is you can have the mindset to speak out where your story is going.
Yeah.
It's the same way like if somebody's writing a song, they can say, well, here's what the song's going to be about. But then you have to have the ability to write the verses. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody write better group dynamic stories. And the actual dialogue and being able to squeeze everybody's little individual story together. And in the Avengers, I've never seen it done better. Never seen it done better because those are all
my God.
lead characters. And to bring them in, I challenge any screenwriter to do a better job. Seriously, I mean, and it had because he. For one thing, it has to be a giant action movie. So you have to have that. You have to have the bells and the whistles and the explosions and the fights. But then you have to care about these guys.
Yeah.
Because most action movies, let's face it, it's been you don't often see a character or much less characters that you give a shit about. And he took that and he knows how to weave that web amazingly.
And structurally too, because you go in knowing that it's going to be a team up movie. He built the suspense of when are they going to team up? How are they going to team up?
Right.
When they are leads in their own right.
And even though it's a longer movie, that's still not much
It
time.
flew by.
Yeah,
It
not much
really
time to
flew
develop
by.
all of that, and he made it happen.
Well,
Marvel.
Oh my God! Well, we're talking about group dynamic and how he writes voice and individual voices in a group.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories from the Buffy writing room was Jane Espenson, who's again she's so cool and she's such a great writer. She was writing a run of dialogue, and she's like, oh well, I don't know if this character is actually necessarily in the scene, and she took a Xander line and gave it to Willow, and when they were going through it with they were going through as a team. Joss, like as they were reading it, Joss goes, wait, no, that's a Xander line. How did that? And he had that was the first time he read it. He's like, that's a Xander line. Why is Willow saying it? And he has such a good ear to his voice. He knows the voices of his characters. And that was one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten about my writing. People have said, one reviewer said that my dialogue ranges from Arthur Miller to Norman Lear. And that's a great compliment.
Oh, yeah.
But when an audience member goes, God, it felt like I was watching a Joss Whedon series. I was like, dead. I was like, done. I'm like, yes, thank you. Oh, thank God, yes.
For anybody that understands the craft and is a fan of comics, especially the guys who really rock it, like a Joss Whedon, you could see it in your writing. It was impressive, and I think people should take more note because I think there's a rhythm and there's a bounce to that dialogue. That you want to learn how to write dialogue. Read Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon.
Read Runaways.
Yeah.
Runaways is great too.
Yeah, and again, oddly enough, I wasn't as big of a Buffy fan. I liked Angel. I liked him, but it was when I read Astonishing X-Men that I thought this dude is brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the whole are you a Marvel? So. The movie thing is so messed up, by the way, because he also got it right. People who aren't into comic books are wondering. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you're into comic books or not. Everybody loved the Avengers movie.
Oh yeah,
everybody loves Iron Man. You know, and they don't know why. And the Batman stuff was cool, but it left so much. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to Superman real quick.
I did not watch Man of Steel.
All right.
Okay.
I can't give you any spoilers. Did you by choice or?
Here's the thing about me.
Do I have to lend you my DVD?
No. Here's the thing about me, DC versus Marvel right now. I mean, if you had to, I'm a Marvel boy.
Me too.
But here's the thing. There's a weird thing in my heart, childhood trauma about DC Comics, and
somebody beat you with a Batman comic?
No. Death in the Family.
Oh God, so dark. Yeah.
Right. Well, here's the thing: Death in the Family was a story arc in Batman and Robin, where the second Robin, Jason Todd, was not very popular among fans.
Okay. Yeah.
As a child, my entryway into comic books was watching the 1960s Batman series and then finding the comic books. and I said, I love. I as a kid, I identified with Robin, and so when I'm reading the books, Jason Todd, Dick Grayson, it didn't matter. That was Robin.
Oh,
and so as it was getting closer, and then when that third issue dropped, and he runs into that building and explodes, and then what they did was DC said, "Do you want Robin to live or do you want him to die?" And they left 2 900 numbers for you to call.
Yeah.
And I'm a kid. I don't know what 900 numbers mean. I just called it as many times as I could. And I got in so much trouble because they're like, what are these? My parents were like, what are these 900 numbers? I'm like, well, first of all, if you think 900 numbers from the 80s, you're like, oh, it's a little sketchy. But hello, welcome to. I don't know.
I'm wearing my cape and nothing else. Wait, isn't this a comic book? Yes, it is.
But so and then I got in trouble, and then he died.
Yeah,
he still died. And I remember because I was granted for a month, and I went to the shop, and I was like, I ran in, I'm like, oh my God, give me, and then I got the issue, and I read it, I bought it, and I read it in the store, and I just started crying.
Okay,
and the shop guy was like,
this is different.
The shop guy was like, what do I do? And then that's when he gave me my first Spider-Man book, which is why that hooked me into Marvel from now on.
Well,
so when you talk about
you have
DC,
ties, emotional ties.
I do.
Yeah.
I
well,
do.
So I can step away from the personal and just say, from a business standpoint, they don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, well, okay, now the Batman franchise, they figured out because they found a tone, and Christopher Nolan actually just made some great films.
Yeah.
But even still, I'm going to say they still could have been better. There's still this aspect. The Superman thing,
Man of Steel?
I don't know what you've heard of the story or anything that he does in it, but I mean, there's a choice that he makes that Superman probably wouldn't make. I feel weird.
Yeah.
This movie's been out for like 2 years, and I can't tell you.
Oh, you can tell me.
Okay, well, he kills somebody.
Oh, I did hear that.
Okay, now and fine, it's like, well, what else can you do? It's such bullshit because I'm sorry, there's over 50 years of source material of great, wonderful stories that they can pull from where they didn't have to go there in the first movie, and that's the problem with DC. The reason most of these Superman movies have not been all that great, or the reason that they can't seem to get a Justice League, because Justice League consists of, for people who don't get it, DC owns, that's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash. Yeah, Marvel is Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Avengers, all that stuff. Well, DC can't seem to get it together because they're they're finding movie makers, and it sounds to me like these guys are not comic book fans, so they're changing so many things. I mean, Superman had a kid in the one movie. They're changing it so much, and they don't understand how do we do it right. They should just it's out there. Marvel's done it right. If DC were smart, they would steal this because not many people know this, but for true fans, they don't like a lot of the X-Men movies or the Wolverine movies, and that's because 20th Century Fox. Marvel almost went bankrupt. Do you know this stuff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which is why they've sold off the rights.
Yeah, they don't own the movie rights to their characters, so they don't have that control. They have certain control, but they don't have a control over everything that's done to the X-Men, even Spider-Man.
Fantastic
Spider-Man's
Four.
been in pretty good hands, more or less, though. I mean, Spider-Man 2, I think, is one of the best.
Raimi's Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, Raimi's Spider-Man 2. But what people aren't getting that. So why is Iron Man so much better? Why are Avengers? Well, Marvel still owns Iron Man, and they still own everything in the Avengers.
Yeah,
and they've shown what happens when they apply the comic book world and the comic book mentality. They watch a little bit more of what's happening in their movies, and then they've scored the jackpot. Well, for one thing, tying everything, at the end of Thor and Captain America and Iron Man, it all ties together. But going to the Avengers, not just getting some guy that can make a film, but getting a guy that is a fan favorite, a guy that understands that fan. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, what an idiotic move on anybody's part to not feed the fans, like not respect, not just, we're giving you your hero, but to respect some of the storylines, because there are millions of them. You're going to piss off millions of people. And when you go to the Avengers and you get this guy who is not only a fan favorite, but has written comic books. Get a guy that has actually written comic books, understands the culture, knows, because you still have to nudge things, but knows how to nudge things so that it still lives in that world. Joss Whedon did it. Biggest opening of all time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. The trick is, when you do any sort of adaptation, book to stage, book to film, whatever the book, you have to respect the source material and respect the fan base,
and comics even more so, because a book is a book. It's in. I heard Stephen Hunter is an author who I love, and he wrote this book called Point of Impact, which they changed into a movie called The Shooter, and The Shooter is crap compared to and the book is so good.
Well, and that's
and he actually said, I don't have a big problem with how that translates because there's two completely different entities, right? But comic books aren't just books; they're storyboarded. They're some of the best storyboards you'll ever see.
Well, that's the thing. Here's the thing, though. It's like you have to respect each medium, and even comic books are very storyboarded, but you have to be wise in why you change things. And there are certain things in comic books that when you see them realized live, it's a completely different thing, and you have to respect that. And there are certain things you can't see live necessarily because with a comic book, there's so much freedom because you can just draw it. Like seeing the helicarrier for the first time, like, whoa! It's like this thing that just, it's not even a thing in the books, right?
Yeah.
It just floats by and you're like, okay, that's a helicarrier. But when you see it rise from the water, so you have to respect that. And what I think, logistically, I feel like why Marvel Studios is so successful is you're right, they have a unifying voice. And it is Joss Whedon. He's actually... as of last year,
like the overlord.
but he technically is like the editor-in-chief of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Like that is his job, is to make sure that even though Thor might have a different producer and director and writer, and all these other movies, Guardians, and everything that's in development, Joss Whedon has a hand in and can tie it all in. And I think that's what's really that's areas of opportunity for other like DC and maybe the other studios who are handling comic book movies. Is they're treating them as such separate franchises that when they try to get it seems from a fan perspective impossible for there to be a Justice League movie because Dark Knight is so different from Superman Returns, which is so different from Man of Steel, and then everything's changing hands. Whereas Marvel Studios figured it out really well. This is how the story, this is how the look, this is everything of the movies is, and it's all unified.
You know what we need to do, because this is officially the longest podcast that I've ever done, and we go from so many subject matters to subject matter. I need to, what I want to do probably after the Captain America movie comes out or something.
Yeah, sure.
I need to have you back on, and we need to just check the flick out.
Yeah.
We need to do like a review of it and like get into true comic book movie geek. We have to have a geek podcast.
Yeah, we should totally have a
It's something that we have to do because I could go on and there's and it's you hate to be an armchair quarterback with it, but it's different from any fanboy can stop and look at the movie theaters and say, well, this is what you should be doing, or the movie companies, but the model's been set. Avengers has shown you fiscally
and the lead up to Avengers 2.
Brilliant.
I mean, they were such different movies. Like, all of these, Thor was such a different movie from Captain America, which was such a different movie from Iron Man, that when you put them, the question is, how are they going to make them all fit together? And it was just seamless.
Joss Whedon, man. So we're going to have a geek podcast. Because this has been a ride, dude.
Yeah.
What have we learned today? we covered forms of homophobia. I think we've touched on some of those folks. Coming out, what have we learned? My God,
Jesus, I don't know. I don't even. It's just blur.
Young writers now have different avenues they can take.
Ryder Strong is born on December 8th, 1979. We've learned that.
Ryder Strong, is that his last name? Really?
Ryder Strong.
Sounds more like a porn name, doesn't it? Oh my God! Or a movie, Ryder Strong. In Ryder Strong. Wow. Okay. Well, good to know. So we've learned that you may still be in love with Ryder Strong.
I don't know. I mean, call me, but whatever.
And comic book movies are tons of fun. So we started off we started off with this weird sort of culture consciousness kind of thing happening, and then got into just geeky fanboydom.
And then Joss Whedon love fest, because how could you not?
Well, we're gonna have a geek cast.
Yeah.
We're gonna maybe we'll even get another comic book person in here, and we'll have a true on geek fest. But it's been a treat, dude. Thanks for sharing and throwing down the Irish cream and coffee. And anybody that got to the end of this one, thanks so much, because we covered a lot of ground. I think we all grew a little today.
I learned something today.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm gonna have you back. And real quick, what are you working on? Is there anything you want people to know about?
This goes.
This will probably happen right after the Dessa Rose run. But, but we had Jason Brooks on, so
that's already covered.
Anything in the...
No, because everything's in the immediate future, and
okay,
everything. I've got things in development right now.
Then DannyBernardo.com.
Yes, that's.
They need to just go there, hit you up, keep watching, keep listening, and seeing what you're going to do.
I've got things in the works. Let's just say that for the summer.
Man, well, you're a busy guy. You're a talented guy from the piece that I've seen, and I like your mindset, man. I like the way your head decide the directions that you decide to go mentally and artistically. The way the way those two worlds sort of hug one another and get through things for the right reasons. Again, a more respectable approach.
Well,
it's really, really impressive. So we'll do this again, and we'll geek out.
Whee!
Everybody, that's Danny Bernardo. Check out chatterfact.com. I'll start putting up some. I definitely am going to put up his fanboy picture from Comic-Con, and I'll talk some more about him. Besides that, thank you for anybody that listened. Have a great week. Have a great day. Have a great month. Go out and find your smile.